Hello, friends. You're on the Fear Files channel, and today we'll tell you about one of the most discussed criminal cases of recent years, the Gabby Petito case, where social media played a decisive role in uncovering a tragedy that shocked the entire world. Imagine this situation. A young couple sets off on a romantic trip across America's national parks, documenting every step on Instagram and YouTube. They look happy, in love, full of hope for the future. And a few weeks later, one of them disappears, and millions of people around the world unite on TikTok to find her. This isn't the plot of a detective series. This is the real story of Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie, which unfolded before the eyes of the entire world in real time. Gabrielle Venora Petito was born on March 19, 1999, in Blue Point, New York. From childhood, she was a creative soul who loved to draw, did pottery, and dreamed of becoming an artist. After graduating from school, she worked at a health food store and saved money for the big trip she had dreamed about for years. Gabby was active on social media, maintained a travel blog, and aspired to become a travel blogger. Her Instagram was filled with bright photos of nature, inspiring quotes, and pictures from hiking trips. Brian Christopher Laundrie, born on November 18th, 1997, had been her boyfriend for over 2 years. They met in high school in New York, but started dating later when they both moved to Florida. Brian worked at a Publix organic product store, enjoyed hiking, loved reading books about wilderness survival, and often quoted works by Chuck Palahniuk. Outwardly, they seemed like the perfect couple. Both loved nature, traveling, led a healthy lifestyle, and planned a future together. In 2019, the couple moved in with Brian's parents in Northport, Florida, to save money for their dream trip. They lived in a separate room in the Laundrie house, and neighbors often saw them together on walks or doing yoga in the yard. They seemed to have serious plans. They even announced an engagement, although this information was later denied by Gabby's family. In the summer of 2020, during the pandemic, when the whole world was locked down at home, Gabby and Brian bought a white 2012 Ford Transit van for $5,000 and began converting it for long-term travel. They installed a bed, a small kitchen, solar panels, and everything necessary for life on wheels. Gabby documented the van conversion process on her YouTube channel Nomadic Static, showing how they were transforming an ordinary cargo van into a cozy home on wheels. On July 2nd, 2021, the couple set off from Florida on a trip across the western coast of the United States. The plan was ambitious: to visit all the iconic national parks, including the Grand Canyon, Yellowstone, Yosemite, and complete the trip in Portland, Oregon by Halloween. Gabby planned to maintain a video blog about the journey, hoping it would help her become a professional travel blogger and monetize her content. The first weeks of the trip, judging by social media posts, went perfectly. On July 4th, they were at Monument Rocks Park in Kansas, where Gabby posted a photo captioned, "Happy Independence Day." On July 8th, in Colorado Springs, where they visited the Garden of the Gods. On July 10th, the couple reached Great Sand Dunes National Park in Colorado, where Gabby took a series of impressive shots of sand dunes against a mountain backdrop. On July 16th, they arrived at Zion National Park in Utah, where they spent several days exploring canyons and taking challenging hikes. Gabby regularly posted photos and videos, showcasing the beauty of American nature and their adventures. In the comments, followers admired their courage and envied such a lifestyle. But already in late July, the first warning signs began to appear, which no one took seriously at the time. On July 21st, Gabby posted an 8-minute video about their journey on Instagram, and attentive viewers later noticed that in some shots she looked tense and her smile seemed forced. On August 12, 2021, an incident occurred that would later become key to understanding the dynamics of their relationship. Around 4:30 p.m., a witness named Christopher called 911 and reported seeing a man hitting a woman near the Moonflower Community Cooperative store in Moab, Utah. He described seeing the couple arguing near a white van, the man hitting the woman, them getting into the van together and driving away. The Moab police quickly responded to the call and stopped the van. The recording from the officer's body camera, which later became public, shows a heartbreaking picture. Gabby sits in the police car, sobbing and taking all the blame. She tells the officers that she has anxiety attacks, that she hit Brian first because he threatened to leave her. Scratches are visible on her face, but she claims she inflicted them on herself. Brian, meanwhile, calmly talks with another officer, laughing and joking. He has scratches on his face which, according to him, Gabby left. He tells them that Gabby suffers from OCD and anxiety disorder, that she's worried about her blog, which isn't developing as quickly as she'd like. The officers, following Utah State Protocol on Domestic Violence, classified the incident as a mental health situation and separated the couple for the night. Brian was provided a hotel room, and Gabby stayed in the van. This police stop lasted over an hour, and all of it was recorded on cameras. Later, domestic violence experts would analyze this footage and point out many red flags that the officers missed. The manner in which Gabby takes all the blame, her excessive apologies, attempts to protect Brian, all classic signs of a victim of abusive relationships. And Brian's calmness and even cheerfulness, his attempts to portray Gabby as crazy, typical abuser behavior. After the Moab incident, the couple continued their journey. On August 18th, they checked into the Fairfield Inn in Salt Lake City. Hotel workers later said they noticed nothing unusual in the couple's behavior. On August 19th, Gabby posted her last Instagram post, a series of photos from Arches National Park with the caption, "Life doesn't have to be perfect to be wonderful." On August 21st, Gabby's father, Joe Petito, ordered dinner for them at the Mary Piglet's restaurant in Jackson, Wyoming. Restaurant staff later recalled that the couple looked tense. Gabby left the table several times and returned with tears in her eyes, and Brian was noticeably irritated. On August 24th, Gabby called her mom and said they were leaving Utah and heading to Grand Teton National Park in Wyoming. This was the last time her mother heard her daughter's voice. On August 25th was the last video call between Gabby and her family. Parents later said she looked worried but assured them everything was fine. On August 27th, an event occurred that would later play an important role in the investigation. A couple of tourists from Florida, Jessica Schultz and her boyfriend, were driving through Grand Teton National Park and recording video for their Red, White, and Bethune channel. In the background of their video, as would be discovered later, Gabby and Brian's white van accidentally appeared, parked at Spread Creek Campground. On the same day, August 27th, a strange scene occurred at the Mary Piglet's restaurant in Jackson. Witness Nina Selvania said she saw Gabby and Brian arguing. According to her, Brian was very aggressive with the staff, yelling at the waitress, while Gabby sat staring at her phone and apologizing for his behavior. At one point, Brian angrily left the restaurant, walked around the building several times, returned, but then left again. Gabby remained alone at the table and cried. On August 29th, another strange encounter occurred. Miranda Baker and her boyfriend picked up Brian, who was hitchhiking on the road in Grand Teton National Park around 5:30 p.m. He told them his name was Brian and offered $200 for a ride to Jackson. Along the way, he said his fiancée stayed in the van to work on her blog while he went hiking along the Snake River. When Miranda said they were going to Jackson Hole, Brian suddenly panicked and asked to be dropped off at the intersection. His behavior seemed very strange to the couple. Around the same time, on August 29th, another woman, Norma Jean Jalovec, also gave Brian a ride. She said he asked to be taken to Spread Creek Campground, where the van was. He seemed agitated and in a hurry to return to the van. On August 30th, Gabby was supposed to meet a friend in Yellowstone for her birthday, but didn't show up. The friend tried to contact her, but the phone was off. On the same day, August 30th, Gabby's mother received a strange text message from her daughter's phone. No service in Yosemite. This message raised alarm because Gabby always spelled the park's name correctly, and they planned to go to Yellowstone, not Yosemite. On September 1st, 2021, Brian Laundrie returned to his parents' house in Northport, Florida, in Gabby's van, but without her. Neighbors saw him arrive, unload things from the van, and act as if nothing had happened. He didn't answer calls and messages from Gabby's family, who were trying to find out where their daughter was. On September 3rd, Brian and his parents, Christopher and Roberta Laundrie, went camping at Fort De Soto Park in Florida. Witnesses saw them there, and they looked relaxed, roasting marshmallows by the campfire. Brian's sister, Cassie, joined them on September 6th with her children. She later said Brian acted normally and said nothing about Gabby. On September 10th, Gabby's family, having received no answers from Brian and his family, contacted the police. Gabby's father, Joe Petito, came to the Laundrie house in Florida, but no one opened the door. Police arrived at the address, but Brian's parents refused to talk and handed over their lawyer's business card. On September 11th, Gabby Petito was officially declared missing. Northport police began an investigation, and the van was seized for inspection. The media picked up the story, and it quickly went viral. The hashtag #FindGabby began spreading on social media, especially on TikTok, where users started analyzing all available photos and videos from the couple's trip. The TikTok detective phenomenon deserves special attention. Millions of platform users turned into online investigators, analyzing every detail. They studied photo metadata, compared timestamps, analyzed facial expressions in photos, looked for inconsistencies in stories. Some users even used Google Earth satellite images to track the van's possible route. One TikTok user noticed that Gabby's last Instagram post didn't have her usual emojis and writing style, which suggested the post might have been published by someone else. Others noticed the book Brian was reading, Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, a novel about the mysterious disappearance of people in the wilderness. On September 14th, Brian's parents stated they hadn't seen him since September 13th, when he allegedly went hiking in the 25,000-acre Carlton Reserve. They said he took only a backpack and didn't return home. This statement caused a new wave of criticism. Why did they wait 3 days before reporting their son's disappearance? On September 15th, police named Brian Laundrie a person of interest in Gabby's disappearance case. A large-scale search operation began in Carlton Reserve using drones, police dogs, and divers. The swampy terrain, infested with alligators and snakes, greatly complicated the search. Meanwhile, the army of internet detectives continued their work. And here a turning point occurred that showed the power of crowdsourcing in the social media era. On September 16th, a TikTok user with a handle at Jessica Overthinks posted a video in which she appealed to a couple from Florida who ran the travel YouTube channel Red, White, and Bethune. She asked them to review their videos from August 27th from the Grand Teton area. Jessica Schultz and her boyfriend reviewed their footage and were horrified to discover they had indeed filmed Gabby's white van. In the video they were shooting while driving along Spread Creek Road. A white Ford Transit parked off the road is visible in the background for about 1 second. They immediately contacted the FBI and handed over the video. This video became a key breakthrough in the case. On September 19th, search teams, using coordinates from the video, discovered remains at Spread Creek Campground in Bridger Teton National Forest, approximately 900 feet from where the van was parked in the video. Although official identification took time, Gabby's family knew it was her. On September 21st, the Teton County coroner confirmed that the discovered remains belonged to Gabby Petito. The initial autopsy determined that death resulted from homicide, but the exact cause of death was not immediately announced. Only on October 12th was it officially announced that the cause of death was strangulation and that Gabby had been dead approximately 3 to 4 weeks before the body was discovered. The public's reaction to the news of Gabby's death was enormous. People across the country organized candlelight vigils, created memorials, donated money to funds helping domestic violence victims. But simultaneously, anger grew toward Brian Laundrie and his parents. The Laundrie family home in Florida was surrounded by protesters and journalists around the clock. On September 23rd, a federal court issued an arrest warrant for Brian Laundrie for using a bank card that didn't belong to him. The investigation established that he withdrew over $1,000 from Gabby's card after her death. This gave law enforcement an official basis for his arrest. The search for Brian in Carlton Reserve continued for weeks. Millions of dollars were spent on the operation. Hundreds of law enforcement officers were involved. The public was divided. Some believed he was hiding in the reserve. Others were convinced his parents helped him flee the country. The TV show Dog the Bounty Hunter even joined the search, receiving a tip that Brian was spotted at a campground on an island near Fort DeSoto. But this information was not confirmed. Internet sleuths continued to put forward theories, from Brian hiding in a bunker under his parents' house to the version that he fled to Cuba. On October 20th, 2021, a tragic discovery was made in Carlton Reserve. After water levels in the swampy area dropped, a search team, including Brian's parents, discovered a backpack, a notebook, and human remains. The discovery site was just a few miles from the reserve entrance, in an area that had previously been flooded. On October 21st, dental records confirmed that the remains belonged to Brian Laundrie. A revolver was found near the body. Later, forensic examination established that the cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head, and the death was ruled a suicide. But the most shocking discovery was made when the FBI released the contents of Brian's notebook found near his body. Although most of the entries were water damaged, they were able to recover pages where Brian wrote a confession. He claimed that Gabby's death was an act of mercy. Allegedly, she suffered injuries from a fall, was in pain, and he decided to end her suffering. Experts in Gabby's family immediately rejected this version as an attempt at self-justification. In the note, Brian wrote, "I ended her life. I thought it was an act of mercy, that she wanted it, but I see now all the pain I've caused. I panicked and fled. I told myself I couldn't live without her." But forensic experts confirmed that there were no traces of injuries on Gabby's body consistent with a fall, only signs of strangulation. After the criminal investigation concluded, a legal battle began between the families. Gabby's parents filed a civil lawsuit against Brian's parents, claiming that Christopher and Roberta Laundrie knew their son killed Gabby, but concealed this information and helped him avoid justice. The lawsuit alleged that the Laundries ignored the Petito family's desperate pleas for help in finding Gabby, even though they knew she was dead. In March 2022, new information emerged. The Laundrie family's attorney accidentally revealed that Brian called his parents on August 29th and said Gabby was gone and he needed a lawyer. This meant the parents knew about the problems several days before Brian's return to Florida. The Gabby Petito case raised important questions about domestic violence, how law enforcement responds to such cases, and the role of social media in modern investigations. The body camera video from the Moab police officer became training material for police departments across the country on how to recognize signs of abusive relationships. Domestic violence experts analyzed the couple's behavior in the video and pointed out classic signs of coercive control: victim isolation, gaslighting, physical violence disguised as mutual quarrels. They noted that the Moab police officers, although they acted according to protocol, missed critical signs that Gabby was the victim, not the aggressor. The Gabby Petito Foundation was created by her parents to help families of missing people and victims of domestic violence. They also successfully lobbied for the passage of the Help Find the Missing Act, which expands the use of Amber Alert system for missing adults. But the case also sparked discussion about missing white woman syndrome, a phenomenon where media pays disproportionately large attention to cases of missing young white women while ignoring missing minorities. Activists pointed out that while the whole world was searching for Gabby, hundreds of missing Native American women in the same region remained without media attention. The role of TikTok and other social media in the investigation became a subject of separate study. On one hand, it was thanks to TikTok detectives that critically important video with the van was found. On the other hand, many internet sleuth theories proved false and harmed innocent people. For example, a woman named Rose, who was Gabby's friend, was subjected to mass harassment after internet detectives mistakenly accused her of concealing information. The story of Gabby and Brian also made many reconsider the culture of perfect life on social media. Gabby's Instagram showed a happy journey full of beautiful landscapes and smiles, but behind the scenes a tragedy was unfolding. This is a reminder that social media shows only a filtered version of reality. Psychologists analyzing the case pointed to signs of narcissistic personality disorder in Brian, his ability to charm police officers, shifting blame to the victim, lack of empathy. His final note, where he tried to present the murder as an act of mercy, is typical of narcissists who cannot admit their guilt even in the face of death. The case also raised questions about the role of Brian's parents. Many believe they should have done more to help find Gabby or convince their son to surrender to police. Their silence and refusal to cooperate with Gabby's family in the critical first days after her disappearance caused public condemnation. In June 2022, the Petito family reached a settlement with Brian's parents in the civil lawsuit. The terms of the agreement were not disclosed, but the Petito family's attorney stated that the Laundries acknowledged they knew Gabby's whereabouts when the Petito family was desperately searching for her. A letter written by Brian's mother, Roberta Laundrie, discovered during the investigation, caused additional scandal. In the letter, dated before the trip, she wrote to Brian that she would love him no matter what, even if he committed murder, and that she would help him dispose of the body. The Laundrie family's attorney claimed the letter was written in the context of their shared jokes about zombie books, but many saw this as proof that the parents were ready to cover for their son. The FBI investigation also revealed that Brian used Gabby's credit card during his journey back to Florida, withdrawing money in Wyoming, Illinois, and other states. This shows he knew about her death and consciously used her financial resources to escape. Analysis of phone data showed that Gabby's phone was turned off or destroyed around August 27th to 28th, which corresponds to the estimated time of her death. The last text message about Yosemite sent on August 30th was almost certainly sent by Brian, attempting to create the appearance that Gabby was alive. The Gabby Petito case changed law enforcement's approach to missing persons cases. Many police departments revised their protocols, especially regarding domestic violence cases and missing young people. The importance of rapid response and using social media to search for information was recognized. The case's impact on legislation was significant. In addition to federal legislation, several states passed laws named after Gabby, aimed at improving coordination between law enforcement agencies in searching for missing persons and mandatory police training on domestic violence issues. The Peacock documentary, The Murder of Gabby Petito, Truth, Lies, and Social Media, explored the role of the online community in solving the case. The film showed how ordinary people, armed only with the internet and a desire to help, were able to find key evidence that professional investigators might have missed. But the documentary also showed the dark side of internet investigations: false accusations, conspiracy theories, invasion of innocent people's privacy. Several people mistakenly identified as Brian Laundrie during his search were subjected to harassment and threats. The Petito family continues their mission to raise awareness about domestic violence. Gabby's mother, Nicole Schmidt, regularly speaks at conferences and schools, telling her daughter's story and teaching people to recognize warning signs of abusive relationships. They emphasize the importance of paying attention to changes in loved ones' behavior, isolation from family and friends, controlling behavior by a partner. Gabby's story has become a teaching example of how toxic relationships can masquerade as passionate love. Gabby's father, Joe Petito, got a tattoo with the last words he said to his daughter: "I love you, be safe." These words have become a kind of mantra for parents, a reminder of the importance of open communication with children about relationship safety. Social media researchers are studying the Gabby Petito case phenomenon as an example of collective investigation in the digital age. Millions of people, united by a common goal, were able to process enormous amounts of information in a short time. This shows the potential of crowdsourcing in solving complex problems. However, experts also warn about the dangers of such an approach. Without professional training and ethical constraints, internet detectives can cause more harm than good. A balance is needed between civic activism and professional investigation. Brian Laundrie's psychological profile, compiled after the fact, shows classic signs of controlling and manipulative behavior. Witnesses reported that he often criticized Gabby's creativity, devalued her dreams of a blogging career, isolated her from friends. His jealousy and possessive instinct gradually intensified during the trip. Analysis of the last weeks of Gabby's life shows an escalation of violence. From emotional and psychological abuse, the couple moved to physical violence, which often happens in toxic relationships. Isolation during the trip, lack of support from loved ones created perfect conditions for tragedy. An important lesson was understanding that domestic violence victims often protect their abusers. Gabby took the blame during the police stop, which is typical for victims who fear consequences for their partners or believe they are to blame for the violence. The case also raised questions about the role of male privilege in the law enforcement system. Many noted how easily Brian was able to convince police officers that he was the victim, not the aggressor, using a calm tone and brotherly manner of communication with male officers. The financial aspect of the case is also important. Gabby was financially dependent on Brian during the trip, which is often a factor keeping victims in abusive relationships. Economic control is one form of domestic violence that is often underestimated. The story of the van that became their home and crime scene is symbolic. What should have been a symbol of freedom and adventure turned into a prison. Many young people inspired by the van life movement reconsidered the romanticization of such a lifestyle after the tragedy. The internet community's reaction to the case showed both the best and worst sides of human nature. On one hand, incredible mobilization to search for the missing girl. On the other, cruel harassment and persecution of innocent people based on unverified theories. An important aspect was the discussion of toxic masculinity and culture of violence. Many saw Brian as a product of a society that teaches men they have the right to control women. That jealousy is a manifestation of love, and violence is an acceptable way to resolve conflicts. Gabby's family created an educational program for teenagers about healthy relationships. They visit schools and universities, telling not only Gabby's story, but also teaching young people to recognize red flags in relationships, establish boundaries, and seek help. The technological aspect of the investigation showed how a digital trail can help solve crimes. Photo geolocation, metadata, surveillance camera recordings, cell tower data, all this created a detailed picture of Gabby's last days. But this also raised questions about privacy and surveillance. Some critics pointed out that the same technological surveillance can be used to control and stalk domestic violence victims by their abusers. The role of traditional media in the case was controversial. On one hand, mass coverage helped mobilize resources for the search. On the other, turning the tragedy into a media spectacle drew criticism. Some journalists crossed ethical boundaries, pursuing the Laundrie family and invading their privacy. Comparison with other missing persons cases showed systemic inequality. At the same time Gabby was being searched for, dozens of other young women, especially minorities, went missing without any media attention. This led to an important conversation about whose lives are considered worthy of public attention. The psychological impact of the case on those who followed it online became a subject of research. Many people reported anxiety, insomnia, intrusive thoughts about the case. The phenomenon of true crime obsession and its impact on mental health became the topic of numerous articles and studies. The legal consequences of the case continue. Besides civil lawsuits, changes are being discussed in laws about reporting missing persons, cooperation between jurisdictions, and the role of social media in official investigations. The impact on the travel industry and van life community was significant. Many bloggers began speaking more openly about the difficulties and dangers of such a lifestyle, about the importance of safety and communication with loved ones. Gabby's image as a victim became a symbol for the movement against domestic violence. Her story is used in educational materials. Her photograph appears on anti-violence campaign posters. But the family also fights to remember Gabby as a person, not just as a victim, a creative, kind, life-filled young woman. The question of whether the tragedy could have been prevented remains open. If the Moab police had acted differently, if someone had intervened earlier, if Gabby had more resources to leave the relationship, These what-ifs haunt everyone connected to the case. Police training based on this case now includes analysis of the Moab video as an example of how manipulators can deceive even experienced officers. The importance of speaking with the victim separately, without the presence of a potential abuser, is emphasized. The role of witnesses in the case showed the importance of civic responsibility. The person who called 911 in Moab, the tourists who filmed the van on video, the people who gave Brian rides, they all provided critically important information. This is a reminder that we all can play a role in preventing tragedies. The financial investigation showed that Brian planned his escape. Using Gabby's card, the return route, attempts to create an alibi. Everything indicates he understood the consequences of his actions and tried to avoid responsibility. Analysis of the couple's social media before the trip showed a gradual change in dynamics. Early posts show more equal relationships, but over time Brian increasingly controlled the content, often criticized Gabby's creativity, insisted on his vision of their journey. The case's influence on domestic violence legislation continues. Laws are being discussed about mandatory arrest with clear signs of violence, about improving police training, about creating a national database of domestic violence cases. Technology companies also reacted to the case. Safety features in travel apps, emergency notification systems. Possibilities for secret communication for violence victims are being discussed. The story of how an ordinary tourist video helped find Gabby became an example of the importance of documenting the surrounding world. Many people are now more attentive to details, understanding that their casual photo or video can help in an investigation. Psychological assistance for the Petito family continues. Losing a child in such circumstances, media attention, the need to grieve publicly, all this creates unique traumas. Their decision to turn pain into activism helps many other families in similar situations. The question of Brian's parents' role remains controversial. Legally, they committed no crime, but morally, many consider them accomplices. Their decision not to cooperate with Gabby's family in the first critical days remains a source of pain and anger. Debates about the death penalty resumed after the case. Many believed Brian deserved trial and punishment, and his suicide deprived Gabby's family of the opportunity to get answers and justice. Others saw his death as the inevitable end of the tragedy. The impact on youth culture was profound. Many young people reconsidered their relationships, began paying attention to signs of control and manipulation. The number of calls to domestic violence helplines increased. Academic research on the case continues. Sociologists study the phenomenon of viral investigation. Psychologists analyze the dynamics of abusive relationships. Criminologists research the effectiveness of crowdsourcing in solving crimes. The story of Gabby and Brian also became a warning about the dangers of isolation in relationships. The trip that was supposed to bring them closer became a catalyst for tragedy when Gabby found herself cut off from her support system. Documentaries and books about the case continue to be released, each time revealing new details and perspectives. But the Petito family insists it's important to remember Gabby not only as the victim of a high-profile case, but as a person with dreams, talents, and a loving family. Changes in police protocols after the case include mandatory separation of parties in domestic conflicts, more thorough assessment of signs of violence, mandatory provision of information about resources for victim assistance. The impact on the tourism industry includes new safety rules in national parks, improved visitor registration systems, educational programs about safety during travel. The role of technology in future investigations will only grow. Gabby's case showed how artificial intelligence can analyze huge volumes of social media data, how satellite images can help in searches, how digital trails can tell a victim story. Ethical questions about the boundaries of online investigations remain relevant. Where's the line between help and interference? How to protect the innocent from false accusations? How to use the power of the crowd without turning into a mob with pitchforks? Gabby Petito's legacy lives on through the foundation in her name, through laws passed after her death, through lives saved thanks to increased awareness about domestic violence. Her story became a catalyst for important changes in society. The lessons learned from this case are multifaceted. For law enforcement, the importance of correctly assessing domestic violence situations. For society, the need not to turn away from signs of violence. For young people, the importance of healthy boundaries in relationships. The ongoing influence of the case is visible in how attitudes toward missing persons have changed. Families now contact police faster. Media are more attentive to such cases. The public is more willing to help in searches. The question of justice remains complex. Brian avoided justice through suicide, but his name is forever linked with murder. His parents live with the consequences of their son's actions. Gabby's family continues to fight, so her death won't be in vain. The impact on pop culture is inevitable. The story became the basis for numerous podcasts, documentaries, articles. But it's important to remember that behind the media phenomenon stands a real tragedy of real people. The future of crime investigations will likely include even more public participation through social media. Gabby's case showed the potential and dangers of such an approach. New protocols and ethical standards are needed to manage this new reality. Psychological trauma from following the case in real time became a new phenomenon of the digital age. Millions of people emotionally invested in the search for Gabby, and her death became a personal loss for many who never knew her. The importance of a support system for domestic violence victims became obvious. If Gabby had a safe way to ask for help, if she knew about resources for leaving abusive relationships, the story could have ended differently. The role of men in preventing domestic violence became a topic of discussion. It's necessary to raise boys with an understanding of healthy relationships, teach them to manage emotions without violence, create a culture where men hold each other accountable. Technological innovations inspired by the case include apps for traveler safety, secret violence notification systems, improved algorithms for finding missing people on social media. The long-term impact on families of both sides continues. The Petito family turned grief into activism, but the pain of loss will never go away. The Laundrie family lives with the stigma of connection to a murderer. Their life will never be the same. Educational programs created after the case are now part of many schools' curricula. Teenagers are taught to recognize signs of unhealthy relationships, understand the importance of consent, know where to turn for help. Changes in journalistic ethics after the case include a more careful approach to covering ongoing investigations, respect for families' privacy, responsibility for information that could affect an investigation. The impact on the true crime content industry was significant. Discussions emerged about the ethics of turning tragedies into entertainment, about the impact on victims' families, about the balance between informing the public and exploiting grief. Gabby Petito's story will remain in history as a turning point in understanding domestic violence, the role of social media in investigations, and the importance of public solidarity in seeking justice. Her life, tragically cut short at 22, continues to save other lives through awareness and changes that occurred after her death. The final thought about the case concerns humanity in the digital age. Millions of strangers united to find one missing girl, showing that even in a world where we often feel disconnected, human compassion and the desire to help remain strong. But this same story warns of the need for wisdom, caution, and ethics in using new technologies and platforms. Gabby's story is a reminder that behind every statistic about domestic violence stands a real person with dreams, hopes, and a loving family. It's a call to action for all of us to be more attentive to those around us, not to turn away from signs of violence, to support those who may be in danger. Ultimately, Gabby Petito's legacy is not only a story about tragedy, but about how tragedy can lead to positive changes. Through pain and loss, through the fight for justice and truth, her story continues to influence people's lives, making the world a little safer for those who might find themselves in a similar situation. And although we cannot bring Gabby back, we can ensure that her death was not in vain by continuing to fight against domestic violence and supporting those who need help. The Gabby Petito case forever changed the landscape of modern criminology and showed how ordinary people using social media can become part of an investigation. The TikTok detectives who found the key video with the van prove that the collective mind of the internet can achieve what traditional investigation methods cannot. But this same case also showed the dangers of such an approach: false accusations, privacy violations, turning tragedy into spectacle. Today, years after the tragedy, the Gabby Petito Foundation continues its work. They have helped dozens of families find missing loved ones, provided resources to hundreds of domestic violence victims, taught thousands of young people to recognize signs of toxic relationships. Every life saved is part of Gabby's legacy. Gabby's parents often say their daughter would be happy knowing her story helps others. She dreamed of touching people's lives through her travel blog, inspiring them to explore the world. Tragically, her story truly touched millions, but not in the way she planned. For those who followed this case, it became personal. Many reconsidered their relationships, began paying attention to red flags they previously ignored. Parents became more attentive to their children's relationships. Friends learned not to dismiss warning signs in loved ones' relationships. The technological aspect of the case continues to evolve. New safety apps include features inspired by Gabby's case: the ability to secretly send a distress signal, automatic geolocation saving, safety check systems. Social networks have implemented new algorithms to help search for missing people. But the most important lesson we could draw from this story is the need to act when we see signs of violence. Too often we turn away, thinking it's not our business, that we might be wrong, that intervention could make the situation worse. But Gabby's story shows the price of our silence. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, remember, help exists. Hotlines operate 24/7. Shelters are ready to provide a safe place. Psychologists specialize in helping violence victims. No one should remain in dangerous relationships out of fear, shame, or lack of alternatives. For young people who are just beginning to build relationships, the story of Gabby and Brian is a warning about how love can turn into control, how romance can mask manipulation. Healthy relationships are built on respect, trust, and freedom, not on jealousy, control, and isolation. We live in an era when our lives are documented on social media, where the line between public and private is blurred. Gabby's story reminds us that behind beautiful Instagram photos, a completely different reality may be hidden. It's important to remember this when we compare our lives to perfect pictures on the internet. The investigation of the Gabby Petito case showed both the best and worst in human nature. We saw incredible mobilization of strangers to search for a missing girl, but also encountered the cruelty of internet mobs. We saw the bravery of witnesses who provided important information, but also the cowardice of those who could have intervened but didn't. In the end, this is a story about a young woman who simply wanted to travel, create, and share the beauty of the world with others. Her life was stolen by someone who should have loved and protected her. But her death was not in vain. It became a catalyst for changes that continued to save lives. Every time someone recognizes signs of abuse and seeks help, every time a police officer correctly assesses a domestic violence situation, every time a friend intervenes to help someone in a toxic relationship, that's Gabby's victory. Her story continues to live through the positive changes she inspired. Remember Gabby Petito not only as a victim of tragedy, but as a young woman full of life, creativity, and love for the world. Remember her smile, her artistic talent, her dreams of travel. And let her story be not only a warning about dangers, but also an inspiration for fighting for a world where every person can live free from fear and violence. The Petito family often ends their speeches with the words, "If Gabby's story saves even one life, her death will not be in vain." Judging by the number of people who sought help after this case, by changes in laws and protocols, by increased awareness about domestic violence, Gabby saved not one life, but many. So let's remember the lessons of this tragedy. Let's be attentive to those around us. Let's not be afraid to intervene when we see injustice. Let's teach our children healthy relationships. Let's create a world where love means freedom, not control. And if you ever find yourself in a situation where you feel your partner is crossing boundaries, where love is turning into control, where you fear the person who should be your support, remember Gabby's story. Don't wait. Seek help. Your life is valuable, your freedom is important, and you deserve relationships built on respect and love, not on fear and control. The story of Gabby Petito is a tragedy that shook the world, but it's also a story about how human compassion, technology, and the pursuit of justice can unite to search for truth. It's a reminder of life's fragility, the importance of caring for those close to us, the necessity of acting when we see injustice. Let the memory of Gabby Petito live not in the tragedy of her death, but in the positive changes that followed it. Let her story continue to save lives, open eyes, change laws and hearts. And may we one day live in a world where such tragedies no longer happen, where every person can travel, love, and live without fear. This was Fear Files. Thank you for being with us on this difficult but important journey through one of the most resonant criminal stories of our time. Remember, you are not alone. Help is always nearby, and every life has value. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. See you in the next episode.